Hi everyone, this is your favorite friend Jay or Jailan Salah as you formerly know her, film critic at In Session Film, Geek Vibes Nation, and Keith Loves Movies. Today I have a very special guest and also a very special friend, Kristin Baristella, host of the Women in Session Film podcast, also fellow writer and film critic. She has like Therefore Review blog. She writes on Keith Loves Movies, a lot of retro reviews, also on in session film. There's nothing that Kristin doesn't do. She also reviews films and books and has like a very cool crafts and like stuff page on Facebook. Like she's a multi-talented person. Everyone that knows me and Kristin knows very well that we love Guy Pearce so much. He's like our favorite actor. And ever since I got introduced to Kristin this year, she gave me an insight even further into the greatest filmography ever of Guy Pearce, the hidden ones, like the bits and pieces that were missing for me. And I discovered Jack Irish, which is a series of films, TV films, and then 3 seasons of great small town detective TV. If you like Mayor of Easttown, if you like all these amazing TV shows, trust me, you gotta check Jack Irish. They call it a hard-boiled detective, but I feel like he's more like down on his luck detective kind of style. He brings in his Pearceness charm, which I think the term that we coined, and you must have known very well by now. It's about his aura, it's about his glam, it's about his prowess as an actor. Or I would like to let my friend Kristin do the introduction to the Jack Irish verse and what she brought into it and what it brought into her life. So, Kristin, the mic is now with you.
Well, you're the one who coined the term the Pearceness. That was all you. You
Yes.
tweeted something about him, and I said, "Oh, you like movies too?" I feel like that's an in-session film family prerequisite that everybody just has to put the respect on Guy Pearce. And I've been writing about Jack Irish at Keith Loves Movies. Bless his heart, Keith is very patient because I tried to explain the show even to him. It's an Australian show that I feel like nobody has seen, and it was originally 3 television movies, as you said, and then they did 3 TV seasons worth, like 6 episodes each. And so I was kind of shaping like, well, how could I even get these reviews kind of formatted and styled and organized? Because I feel like the Jack Irish, the reason maybe it's not so popular, why it's frankly obscure, is just America, we want to put things in little boxes. And the show, I don't think, can be so defined. He was a lawyer, but it's not like a courtroom drama show. I don't think you're ever in the courtroom. And maybe there's legalese, technicalities, but that's more as it's needed for the case. And yet there are cases, but he's not a detective, but yet he's off on the fringes of cop stuff. But then there are these big, huge investigations, and there's investigative journalism going out on the hunt and interviews and snooping around. So there's no real way to define the show. And I love that it is very character driven, even though the cases are very complex and intertwined. And I guess the seasons have a little more room to get into some of those cases because the first 3 telemovies were based on books by Peter Temple, but then they go beyond that material. So there's just so much to enjoy in this goofy little world, in this very, very finite, it's Fitzroy, which is like a suburb of Melbourne, Australia. So it's a very like insular little space and location and little world, but it's just a really charming, very addictive television show once you get into it.
Definitely. And okay, as a small town girl, and as I think from New Jersey, we feel the small town vibe as well. You are from New Jersey, I'm from Alexandria, Egypt, and this is where we meet our little world of TV and movies. Do you think this is why we connected to Fitzroy this much? Because I feel like the vibe is the same, whether it's Melbourne, whether it's Egypt, whether it's America. It's always the same. Like you have your bickering old people, you have, like the constant motion of events, you have your like people you meet, like on your way to the grocery store, you have your familiar places, even the routine that he does, the people that he knows, the people that used to be, his father. Do you think this is kind of the appeal too that we love about shows like that?
I think so. It's just such attention to detail. And I noticed this as I've been going through these rewatches for Keith Love movies. And he's so funny. He sent me a message. He said, I saw LA Confidential and I get it. It's okay. I said, you're one of us now. You're one of us. And
You're part of
even
the family.
but just going through with a critical eye, I noticed just the attention to detail. And by the time, when the show first started, 2012, I was looking back at it again, going like outdoor filming, real lighting, real locations, real buildings. And then I did notice here the 3rd season, which was 2021, shortened for the pandemic, where it did have a little more darker, stylish kind of gradient, like contemporary style to it. But there's so many little things. Yes, this whole idea of this Fitzroy football kind of club culture and the downtrodden pub and just these silly little things like the cool classic cars, just each quirky kind of character. Like there's moments for all those little pieces that I just think make everything more realistic and more lived in. And that even if the cases seem preposterous or how deep do these things go, we're so into the characters and we're invested in the ride with them that we love them and appreciate them. So it's very, even when it's very dangerous, it's also a very funny show. There's a lot of jokes and you realize, geez, this is supposed to be something serious and tense, but then there's usually like some kind of quip or quirky visual or something funny that it's okay to laugh at the absurdity of it, that this is a loony place and this is just television. And yes, these are crazy circumstances. So there's a little bit of that self-aware kind of charm and just yet sense of realism.
Definitely. Okay, so when you first introduced me to this show, I got addicted. I felt hooked because for me, it's very comforting. The idea of the monotony sometimes of the woodwork, of the things that Jack does when he goes to the bar, when he has the conversations, and he's starting to like argue with Stan and all those three senior citizens. It's just funny and it's also kind of repetitive, but in an ASMR way. You know what I mean? It's that soothing effect. But I also thought to myself, well, if someone else other than Guy Pearce, even a good actor, have starred in it, would you have loved it? I don't think so. I think Guy brought a lot of charm, a lot of riz, as they say nowadays, to this character because you don't see him as this, like badass detective going in. No, he gets beaten up, he gets tied up, he gets peed on. A lot of things happen to him. And at the same time, he has this human side. He begs his lover. He calls her to stay, but at the same time, he's also a rogue and he kind of sleeps with a lot of women. And he kind of like entangles someone like Linda, who we'll get to later, in this relationship with him, which I kind of felt as the seasons went on how intensified it was. So I want to ask you, like, how do you think the impact and the Pierceness brought to the character of Jack Irish?
The Pierceness. I think I said this to you one time before, like I would still watch the show if it wasn't Jack Irish, if it was just the other people, or maybe Guy Pearce is what got me into the door to the show. And you were like, no, blasphemy, blasphemy. I mean, his persona does carry it, but the fact that he isn't suave, like today's, New York cop shows, suave leather, so cool, like, and again, 2012, but as technology, very technologically inept. Yeah, that's one of the funny characters he has. Simone, the fast talker who has to do the IT stuff with him. And she's like, this is so silly, stupid. She's like, turn the charger over, then plug it in the little port. Like she's like, anybody could do this. And like he thinks he's taking pictures of like license plates, and instead he's like snapping like weird pictures of himself. Like he's very technologically inept. Like so many bad things happen to him where you're just like, hasn't he suffered enough, man? So it's a very vulnerable performance. And the DVDs have some behind the scenes features which I really love. And although I don't like Joss Whedon, I guess for people who can't quite fathom, like how much we kind of adore this kind of world building, like I remember an article or behind the scenes or something with Buffy where particularly when Buffy, has to kill Angel, send him back, even though he turned good right before she's stabbing him. He says, what's good for Buffy is not good for the audience, or we need that kind of pain for that kind of drama. And on these behind the scenes features where Guy Pearce has said something like they don't want the show to be saccharine or sappy or always have everything be happy with this kind of romance, but that doesn't mean that there isn't pain or melodrama or emotion. So I love that it's very mature and sophisticated. Like they are a couple, Jack and Linda, but yet they go through so much crap along the way, and you're invested in all of these little idiosyncrasies. That I said that word wrong. See, I'm getting giggly as we're talking. But like American shows are just would be styled so differently, where like some of these, they would call these characters superfluous. They would cut them out. They'd be like, why are there three old men sitting at the bar being cranky? What purpose do they serve? Every once in a while they do have some kind of nugget of wisdom or something, but they're just hysterical. They're there for such support. And the bartender up and down, and then but as the sun into I don't know, their solitude in this world, and or like Jack doing the woodworking. I mean, just the fact that there are segments of just him woodworking. You're watching nothing but watching Guy Pearce just stain, and I'm like, oh, look at the way he's following the grain. I love it. I come from a family of carpenters. I'm like, look at that. I'm like, oh, look, he's got the grade. Oh, look at that, it's so beautiful. Look at that wood.
That's my
And you're like,
ASMR.
really, a show with a woodworking song?
Really, I just
It's
watching Guy
wonderful. It's
Pearce do
wonderful.
woodwork. I think I don't need anything other than that. Comfort me, put me to sleep, watch him just do woodwork. Oh
Hmm.
wow.
And the irony, because yes, when we spoke on the Women in Session episode, because yes, you were new to it. You said, "Can I talk about Guy Pearce?" I'm like, "Who am I to stop you?" And we were talking about the short film that he did called Lorne, and talking about how kind of creepy or scary it is. You wouldn't want to be out in the wilderness with. It's very disarming when he's just this short where it's basically 15 minutes of Guy Pearce talking at the camera, and you're kind of like, this is creeping me out. This is freaky. Would not want to be encounter this dude in the woods. But then when you're watching him woodworking and classical music is playing, and there's a reason for it in the story, when thugs have come, beat up people and damage the workshop, and he's trying to put all these pieces back together, but he's kind of crappy at the woodworking. They all make fun of him for being like the oldest, crappiest apprentice ever, but yet he's trying to do his best, and the saws and everything, and you're just like, it's a very strange, and maybe in a Seinfeld way, like a show about nothing, but there is an importance to this because these things are personal to the characters. And so I love that, instead of just stock characters or plot driven things that we seem to be getting so much today.
It's weird in today's conversation when you find articles, they're like saying, oh, you know what episodes to skip from Lost and stuff like that. And the mentality that is, I think, plaguing people right now, that everything must have a purpose. Like when you used to have like a one episode, the one-timer episode, the episode that kind of like went bonkers and the writers got creative in genre shows like Supernatural for me, Buffy, other shows where it's like an alternate universe, a what if episode and stuff like that. And then you have Jack Irish where there are sequences or episodes where nothing really happens. So what do you think this comments like, why are we now obsessed with things that have to have a meaning or have to have a purpose or have to be like within a structured format? Is it like all the content analyzing stuff? Is it all the logistics, all the, like whatever the, like the tests they did on viewers and stuff? I don't know your opinion because it kind of bugged me. This article just felt like lifeless to me.
Yeah, and I don't even like Lost, never have. But even I was like, you don't understand how a 24 episode season was structured, and I guess streaming has a lot to do with that, because like I love Deep Space Nine, but part of the problem with it is it was obligated for 24 episode seasons when the two-parters in their arc storytellings were the best parts. So it's almost like, yeah, you do have to, it's a very tough show to rewatch because you almost do have to have like a guide of, okay, these were the filler kind of skipper episodes and these were the big important arcs going on. And streaming, the way we're shortened to, it's funny because when you watch British shows, you expect them to be 6-episode seasons every once in a while or something, but they were designed that way compared to now binge models where if something's 8, 10, 12 and that's it, sometimes there's cliffhangers. And I wrote about this on my blog, where when everything is just an in the can package and sort of sold for that binge model as content, there's no chance to perfect the show. There's no chance to have a mid-season break to retool and say, maybe we should drop that storyline. Maybe that character's not working. This person was the breakout star. Let's develop that. So you just end up with a lot of litter that's cluttering streaming. And I haven't said Jack Irish.
Ooh, I'll take that.
It was called The Innocents, a TV show for Netflix that Guy Pearce was in several years ago. And it's about like these shape-shifting kind of, for some reason, these Scandinavian women have like this bloodline where they're shape-shifting. And he's up in this like Norwegian commune. He's married to one of them, but he's also studying them, trying to figure out what their triggers are, that when they're afraid or have an emotion, that it causes them to kind of shape-shift into other people. And there's a daughter of one of them that also has this lineage, and his wife is having some sort of dementia. So she's losing control of the ability for this. So he's trying to figure out how to transfer. He's obviously got, nefarious intentions as this doctor here. And he's trying to transfer, the consciousness and manipulating these women. But yet, as intriguing and awesome as that sounds, and the women in the commune were so excellent in the show, but the show is about the teenage girl. where
Oh,
like she's running away in London and getting into like raves and bouncing into people and not knowing what's going on. And I'm like, really? Like totally wrong like perspective of the story. And then I had to say to myself, was this Guy Pearce biased? But I'm like, no, I'm looking at this going, but you change the show to make it fit the Netflix model instead of telling the best story available. So I don't know if that is an American thing, a Hollywood thing, a streaming thing, but then you do notice that more and more when you see, I do believe Jack Irish is available still on Acorn TV. I always just got the DVDs when they became available, but you can tell the difference when you see international programming, the jarring difference between the American structure where there's, you don't get the attention to detail that you find in some of these other shows.
definitely. Wow. Okay. So now that I'm talking to you about Jack Irish, I want to know where to start. Like, do we start with the first, like TV film, like as they started? So, okay, first TV film, Jack Irish, Bad Debts. Okay. So, okay, yes, girl, do it, girl.
Sorry.
First thing I wrote, like, okay, I'm gonna tell you the first thing I wrote, and then I'll let you in to just get our viewers into it. His cooler character introduction. He listens to Oprah after collecting money from creditors. Like, okay, badass alert. I found my tribe. Just the way he smooths in the action, the smooths into the events of the episode. I just love this character. I'm rooting for him so much. He's just going there, collecting money, almost got shot, and then he went home and he's listening to Oprah, and you're like, who is this guy? So give us a brief on this season, perks, pros and cons, stuff that you like, stuff that you didn't like, and just like a review recap.
Well, I think so far at Keith Loves Movies, I think I have 2 reviews up already of the first 2 movies. So yeah, I would definitely begin because everything kind of layers as the shows go on. And ironically, and I've heard people say this when I have discussed this with other kind of TV folks on, film Twitter, TV Twitter, where they don't like the change in format from it being TV movies, 3 TV movies to then going to episodic. And I think in the first season, the episodic maybe does seem a little uneven because you are trying to pay attention to characters and you're trying to build a case. And I generally don't like when shows have the like anonymous, ominous like scenes where you're seeing villains or weird like bad action happening and you're not really sure why, but you feel like it's going to be important later. I'd much rather stay when we stay in the point of views. So I think the first season has a little unevenness to that. And as I said, they're also going beyond the novels at that point. But then I also like how they almost layer, like sometimes it seems like the cases kind of repeat themselves, but they also refer to these or previous cases and crimes and events that have happened, and that there's consequences for each of these things that have gone on. So that kind of continues to build up. And then the things that we see in the beginning of the show end up really coming back to tying everything together in the third and final season. And you said, when he starts doing the debt collecting, but the show opens, it's not necessarily a spoiler per se, but with the death of his wife, in a very shocking manner, where he was the suave, cool lawyer who thought he had everything together. And then you see him, being like some debt collector bookie thing at like the racetrack. And then you open with such trauma, and then it's like, he's like, why is this guy holding this old gun at my balls? And he locks him in the bathroom, and he's like, oh, did you hide the money in like the air conditioner vent or the dishwasher? And he's writing out the IOU, and he wants his pen back, and he's like, put my pen back out from under the door. And he gives the guy his toupee. And it's so funny that like I haven't even seen this in a while, and I know this like we're frame for frame.
You know it by heart, Chris.
He takes like a bottle of wine or something from the dude and leaves and goes back home and drinks. And it's so, again, the attention to detail. I noticed this because I was just rewatching the 3rd season to finish my edits for Keith Loves Movies. And I noticed even when he kind of put back together a little bit, he still tends to wear the same things. He only kind of has one suit, which is a suit that his wife picked out for him that sometimes he's reluctant to put back on. And again, that's a little bit of the character, that every time he puts on that suit, it's an occasion, and he knows that. And he tends to wear the same kind of shirts. And sometimes there's just scenes where we just see him sitting on his couch drinking, and you can see like he's wearing shirts that are kind of holy, or wearing the same kind of pajama bottoms all the time or something, where he's in a very bad way, and again, today's shows would be, and I think once or twice, maybe throughout the whole series, do they have like echoes or flashes going back to that murder, even though we know it's always there. Even characters say, you know, there's already a woman still living in this house, or he says there's nothing here but ghosts and horses, you know. But again, today I feel like it would be so overdone. Echo, echo, flashback, flashback, remember, remember, remember. And we don't
You're
need that.
stupid, you're stupid.
Yeah, he just completely embodies, you know, this kind of, like, he posted a picture of where he's just on the couch, and again, because he's not good with phones, he has like an old phone, and he's kind of just half laying on the couch with kind of the phone like half against his ear, half drunk, half wanting to call his girl, you know. And it's just the time, and they are like pretty much hour-long episodes too, which I think really goes a long way in just having that extra time for that kind of reflection.
I love also the female characters here because I think they're like so. I was just talking to one of my friends about an old TV series that we watched. It was called The Shannara Chronicles, and I told her, although they made, oh my gosh, like don't anybody who didn't see it, don't, even if you love Austin Butler, don't watch this show. And it had like female characters that are like, oh, I'm so strong, you know, like I'm so cool. I hate it when shows do this to our faces. I feel like I hate the female character more. I feel it's actually inherent misogyny. Here you have someone like Linda, very driven, very ballsy. She's actually like taking initiative even with him. She has a great career. She's so vulnerable and she's crying and she's telling him like, I'm third wheeling in your relationship with your wife. It's as if I'm the affair and the wife is alive, and she cheats on him. He cheats on her. And at the same time, she has like her career and she tries to use him and he uses her and she breaks down and she's like, there's a time when she just wants to have a baby and he doesn't want to have a baby. So when I see a woman like that, I feel like I love her. She's not a stereotypical boring character, but at the same time, she's not like hormonal driven, strong female character where you feel like you don't exist anywhere, honey, except maybe in the writer's fascination or imagination. And then you have, you know, like Sarah, who's like she's, I think she appeared only in one season. She's like the reunion between Victoria Caravan and Guy Pearce, which you would have anticipated. And she's such a badass, and the way she makes her art, and she eats onion sandwiches, and I'm like, okay, hey girl. And I just love everything about these two women whom I felt were like very prominent in the Jack Irish legacy, in the Jack Irish, you know, like triangle of or slither of women in his life. So I want to know your commentary about the females in this show, especially these two women whom I love.
The irony that the show is called Jack Irish, because particularly when you get to like at the end of the show, as I said, they're all involved in their own cases, and you begin to see scenes with all the people that Jack brought together, but beyond Jack. And it's like, so the women are very well written independently of him. And as the series goes on, again, when they have time with those longer episodes, where they begin to tackle, you know, education, police corruption, big pharma, where there's multiple layers of some of these women, where like the psychiatrist that he meets, who's doing like unethical kind of stuff, like not a villain, but kind of a complex person, or like the headmaster of a school who's in on these kind of schemes. But then you've got like women like security guards. There's racism kind of commentary through this, and you know, where these varying roles for women, and when Stan the bartender meets the woman online, he gets like a mail order bride, Cherry, who comes and stays. And again, when he's going up against big immigration corruption stuff, they deport her, and they look at the paperwork and they say she's working in a place 7 days a week with rooms upstairs, you know, and she's you know, your paperwork is wrong. So it's like the way social stratas of women are kind of multiply addressed. And I was thinking this the other day, because every season Linda's in, she's still a journalist, but in a different venue in some way. First, she starts out as like a newspaper reporter, then she's on TV, then she has a radio show, then she's traveling internationally. Then she goes through this phase where she's stuck doing like celebrity puff kind of pieces in like Bollywood type stuff, and she hates it. But then she also, you know, writes a book, but then, you know, she says, you know, investigative journalism is dead. So it's like, you want kind of understand at one point, but she wins all these awards and gets all this respect because she's always doing these big expose pieces every time Jack cracks open a case. So she's kind of very well respected, very well known, but she kind of bounces around. Like she never seems to stay in one place too long. And you kind of feel like it's very relatable. What?
Exactly. It hits home. It's very relatable. You feel like this is very relatable. No matter what you do, no matter what a breakthrough you do, find yourself still struggling in your career and you're like hopping from one thing to the other. So definitely.
And she's trying to balance, is their home life with Jack. And every time she goes off on these adventures, she says to him, you never asked me to stay. And he's like, well, I know you won't. And she's like, yeah, maybe I do put the story first, but you don't even try and stop me, you know. And the irony is that, yeah, when Sarah comes along, and she does have a little bit of trauma and, you know, like a political dad or something, and issues, and again involved in the murders happening. It's her sister, I think, is missing
Yeah,
or something. That's how she kind of meets Jack. And but yes, her rage in her artwork, like
I
she's
love
got
it.
her torch, and like and there's the classic cars, the Studebaker, and when the Studebaker is damaged, and she's like, "Can I have the nameplate so I can make a sculpture?" And you're like, "Girl, girl." And when you actually do have a couple of moments where you do get Sarah and Linda face to face, and you're like, you know what, we still like each of them, even they like each other, even if they've got Jack between them, you know. So yeah, there are times where he bounces around, he gets his thrills, but then there is still always like the shadow of his wife. Like there's even a couple of times where he saves like the recording of her, or there's still like a picture of her, you know. So there's lots of like really, and also father maternal kind of figures. Like Linda says, I'm getting older,
Yes.
and you know, there's, not to say that there's daddy issues, but I guess there is, that they all love Jack Irish's father, Bill Irish, is like a big Fitzroy football star. They want to build a statue to him or something. Like he's very famous. But Jack Irish is like, you know, he wasn't even that great of a dad. Like he died in a bar fight, drunk stupidly or something, you know. But everybody knows him. That sometimes that's how he gets ploy. Hey, you're Bill Irish's kid, you know, in order to get inside and stuff. And so you're constantly grappling with this. The way for him to grow up is to kind of face his father, to become like a father himself. So there are times where he kind of takes in like a little teen kind of girl, and then Linda always wanting to have a baby, and then he does actually have a son as the show goes on, and he kind of, you know, can't adjust to being a father. So it's like, in some ways, the whole show, and even though it starts in 2012, it ends in 2021. So we're with Jack Irish a very long time, because when the show starts, his wife has been dead 10 years. So it's been like 20 some years that we've been in the journey with this character, where it's like he stays the same, but all these characters kind of move on. And they even say to him, like, I'm not getting into some other, you know, like his cop friend is like, just stop finding dead bodies. Please. You know, everybody kind of learns to move on. And it's just such a beautiful show of like the way these crimes each come back to him, of like what's wrong. And Linda, when there are times when Linda's like abducted and threatened and kidnapped, and there's bombs going off and stuff, and she just comes to a point of like, it's not worth it. And then when she does have a family, adopts a girl, and she's like, I can't put my family in jeopardy to be whatever an investigative journalist is supposed to be, you know. So it's these great moments of personal versus career versus your history, your baggage. You know, I love that.
I love that too. And I love the idea that he doesn't move on. Like, I love characters where you feel like, yes, you could see this person, everybody's just evolving around them and everybody's just finding a place for themselves, but probably they can't. And it kind of breaks your heart, because you think he's like, he's so smart and he's so charming and he could have done it, you know, like in the bigger world, but he just doesn't want to. He kind of like is cool with his kind of small life and stuff. And that just makes me love him even more. Like maybe I would have kind of felt alienated if they gave the character like a different, deviated from what made sense to the character, which is why I love the world building and at the same time the character structure, where you feel like everything, every move the characters make sense, and not just Jack, you know, like the ones around it too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And instead of changing the character for the plot, it's we have, you know, really curmudgeon characters who are kind of stuck in their ways. And they joke that like Jack never has a passport and never goes anywhere. He's never left Fitzroy. But then when Sherry's deported, Stan says, I was born in this you know, pub upstairs. And he's like, and I'm getting the paperwork. He's like, I'm gonna go to China to be with her because that's what's more important. You know, so it's like the characters come from such a real place, and that's just so refreshing to see. And we haven't even gotten into the horse racing stuff either.
okay, what about the horse race stuff? Because to me, this was like so complex. At the same time, I felt like, wow, it took a lot of time and it took a lot of investment, a lot of details. Why are we even talking about this? They must be in the like original books or something. But for me, it was like bizarre. Why do you think there was a lot of attention given to that?
I don't know, because it's very ironic, you know, like Jack's always asking what he did wrong. Does he think it was his fault that his wife has died? You know, that, you know, causes all the pain for all these women that, but yet he's driven by this kind of sense of justice, of putting things right. You know, they say, why are you doing this? He says, well, the person in the coffin, that's why. This person was my friend. And he even says things like, you know, I meet more honorable people like at the fixed horse races, you know, than I do anywhere else. You know, so, and it's so funny, like little Harry, little old man in his tweeds, is always going on about respecting the integrity of racing. It's the sport of kings. And yet, you know, he'll be like, you know, Jack, go put odds on this one, or, you know, go put odds on that one. And sometimes he won't even let them like sit near each other, so that way people won't know that they're like connected with their bets or something. It's just like this extra, I don't know, this extra kind of element that, like, again, it kind of completely seemingly silly normal thing that, like, off the books, you know, like it's kind of crime. He's got the strong man Cam who comes and bails him out, has gear or the weapons, but then it's like he's just like, yeah, the debt collector bookie type stuff, but yet it's like they're a family, and they're doing all these things together. They help one another, and it's just another like touching, like, and like when he's woodworking with Charlie, it's like, because Bill Irish was such a bad dad, it's like Jack keeps trying to replace him in some
This
way.
is why he
He's
likes older
yeah,
men. Exactly.
yeah, he's got his Charlie mentor, the woodworking. He's got Harry at the racetrack. He's got like the Fitzroy Youth Club. And by the end of the show, when he's going to visit them in the nursing home, I'm like, oh, stop, stop,
Stop, Kristin. Cry.
no,
It's so hard.
and you know, and I know I get teased, you know, a lot because I've been going through this Guy Pearce career rewatch, and but Jack Irish yet is something that I don't rewatch all the time, but like, but yet when I watch it, like what the disc is in, and if it's like 2-3 episodes on the disc, I just rewatch the disc. So it's like I rewatch it while I'm watching it. Then it's like I kind of have to let it sit for like a year or so or something. Like it's not one that I watch all the time, because in some ways you like to forget, you like to be a little surprised, but it is such an emotional like journey that you go on, that you're invested in all this, yes, silly preposterous horse racing stuff, you know. And I sobbed the first time I saw it. I felt like I wished I could go back and see everything all over again. Immediately rose up to, you know, one of being my top 5 favorite shows ever. Like it was just such a wonderful little world, like a good cathartic experience. Like ironically, as we say, if Jack Irish doesn't change, but everyone else does, he kind of has to learn how to adapt. Yeah, use his smartphone. Or when he loses his classic car and he's driving around in the stupid little purple like borrowed
Modes, right?
yes, and it's like such an absurd kind of visual, like all these zany things that kind of happen along the way, but it's like you go on the journey with the character. And I just, again, comparing like some of today's bad movies where it's all about desensitizing visuals, where it's like, no, it's okay to just go on a journey. And by time we get to the end of like, yeah, when he's visiting them in the nursing home, and you're just like, oh, the journey that we've been on here is like, oh, it's too much. It's too much, but it's like, that's okay. You know, that's okay. Isn't that what storytelling is all about? You know what I mean?
Makes us remember the beauty of storytelling, I think, because you go with the character, even when it like leaves you at a stage in their life that is kind of tugs at your heart, or you feel like very emotional. But this is the beauty of it. This is the beauty of the novels that we used to read in the past, or even, you know, like the shows that we grew up and were raised on, rather than now where you don't even know why they have like a new Stranger Things, you know, like season or whatever, or why is there a House of the Dragon when they are used to be Game of Thrones, you know, like why are we even doing whatever we're doing? So I think the idea of the character that you go on a journey with, and you see the actor aging, and you see the actor going through a lot, because for me, like Linda, when I first saw her in that first movie, and then you see her in the second season, for me, I stopped at the second season. I didn't find the third, but when I saw her at the second season, she was like, wow, I thought to myself, wow, Linda, really you grew? Does this mean I grew too? And I started getting like, no, stop it, don't cry. So I think the idea of the aging of the character and the ups and downs, the nuances that you used to have. I remember when I used to watch Supernatural, my favorite show of all time, until season 5. After that, no. I remember seeing Jensen Ackles' babyish, beautiful first season, and then you start seeing him in season 5, and you're like, oh my God, Jensen, you're now like this DILF, you know, like you're aging, you're like fine wine, but you're not the baby. So it's the same. You see Jack Irish in the beginning, and he's Guy Pearce at a certain stage in his life, and he's looking, you know, like this coolness. And then you start seeing him growing older, and the lines on his beautiful face kind of like showing. So you just fall in love even more because it feels as if a part of you is actually growing with these characters. And I don't think this is something that we see with modern TV, even if people are aging. I don't know. So
Allowing people to look realistic, to carry their scars. And most of the time he kind of has sort of longer shaggy hair as Jack Irish, but there's the third TV movie where he actually has short hair.
and that's
And
my
it's
favorite.
well, it's so funny because it's almost like it's not Jack Irish when he has short hair. Because in that one, it's like maybe he is kind of in a good place. Him and Linda are okay, and he's like jogging and having lattes. He's not drinking, and he's actually he's reconnected with his wife's family. He's building a cradle for his niece, you know, and it's so touching where you think he almost has it all put together. And then you get to, you know, an explosive finish, and you think that it's fine. It ends there. That's those novel adaptations. So then you think, well, where could they possibly go in the seasons? And you get into the beginning of the first season and everything has to reset, and you get this, you know, hasn't he suffered enough? Like, stop. Like it goes off goes off in this completely wild direction that's, you know, so crazy, and you were completely on board for, you know, Jack going crazy off revenge, and he's constantly beat up and looks dirty and shabby and cut up. And then as the show goes on, there's some point where he's talking to a doctor, and it's just, you can see on screen like his medical chart listing every single thing that's happened to him. And there are times when you see, you know, literally the scars, bruises, bandages, but it's like all the internal carrying of all these things that have happened. And yeah, you know, we see Linda go through this where she cries, where she's like, I can't go through this again.
And she's tired.
Like, to have characters say that, to be flawed, to not be perfect, is just refreshing.
And then when they were picking on each other, when they were living together, and you could feel like, wow, oh, so realistic. How is this TV? Stop. Whereas in Grey's Anatomy, even when they were like picking on each other, I would feel like choreographed bullshit, choreographed fighting. I don't know. I can't stand it when it feels like forced. Like this is acting. We're acting like a bickering couple. Ah. But here it feels so natural. You know, like even people have their hair like tousled and everything just looks like they just got out of bed. I love this so much. Okay, because you're like the Guy Pearce expert of both of us, Chris. I gotta ask you, why do you think like a movie star, like the weight of Guy Pearce, where we discussed this, I think, thousands of times, but then you see him invest a lot of time, a lot of his career in the Jack Irish franchise. Why do you think he's so experimental like this? He's so adventurous, and why do you think he gives a lot of attention to TV, which I believe he does?
Yeah, the irony, because I've heard him speak about not liking doing long form things, because he did spend like the early time when he was on Neighbors, and he's, you know, doing, you know, hundreds of episodes on a soap opera that was really an 80s soap opera going, you know, very kind of hokey. And you can kind of see, I guess, if you're following his filmography, of like, he would go make something and then do a Jack Irish, go do something else, then come back to it. And I guess honestly, because it's an Australian show and it's just really well written, and you don't get this kind of stuff anywhere else. And I've said before, it pains me, you know, I see people on film Twitter like, oh, his career sucks, now he does direct to video stuff and he hasn't done anything since Memento. And I feel kind of like Mormon, because I say, like, you know, not have you heard of your Lord and Savior Jesus? I'm like, have you seen Jack Irish? That's actually how I will answer people. Like, just watch Jack Irish. And I think I discussed this with our friend M.M. Miller when I was talking about Memento, or when we were talking about Iron Man 3, perhaps, because that's like 2013. And that's probably the biggest, hugest, Hollywoodest, most movie of Guy Pearce that everybody has ever seen. And it's like, yeah, it's not his best work by any means. And I mean, even the other Hollywood thing, like I don't particularly love Lawless, but his character in that, or Prometheus, was big at the time. Like the Hollywood things we were seeing of him was not his best work. And while these things were happening, he was doing a couple of really great indie movies, and he was going back to do Jack Irish. And it's like, so the idea that it's like, because I think these were like 12, 13, 14, and then like 16 or 18 or something. So like in between, I don't know, where Americans basically forgot about Guy Pearce, it was like, oh no, look, he was doing this award-winning Australian show. You know, so I just think that this was just better quality. And I mean, and yeah, he's done direct-to-video stuff, divorce films that he's had to do now, but he hasn't really done a lot of big Hollywood things since Iron Man 3. And I really don't blame him because the quality's not there. He says, he'd rather work close to his family, be at home, and do things that are interesting to him. And he even says, even if that means something that's a support role or, he's not looking for a lead Hollywood thing, which I feel like everybody else is looking for a big Hollywood thing. I'm sorry, I have not even seen anything with the Glenn Powell, but I'm already sick of this dude.
I'm tired of him. I'm tired of him. Thank you.
Dude. I'm like, he just looks like AI. And then it was like the picture from Side by Side with Tom Cruise. I'm like, it was like the Golden Girls, Dorothy. Like, I think you can get that chin in a catalog. Like, it was like Hollywood is just so cookie cutter.
Thank you so much.
And this is why I follow his career. I had been off and on for 25 years. And when I went back to go through this rewatch, I saw all that of like, okay, these are intriguing, provocative performances that continue to impress me. Is it the storytelling? Is it the acting? That these are just new concepts and instead of the same old. And it's like I will always go back to Jack Irish. And even people were talking about him having clunky direct-to-video stuff. Bloodshot came out right before the pandemic, a franchise non-starter. But then Mayor of Easttown obviously was massive, huge, wonderful, and love it, adore it. And then he began being credited for everything of like Guy Pearce, Mayor of Easttown, or people would interview him and be like, so Mayor of Easttown. And he's like, thanks, I was in it for 5 minutes. And again, the idea of like, yeah, here was the greatness of Mayor of Easttown, American Hollywood hit. But then it was like, here was his entire own show vehicle that was still happening, the 3rd season of Jack Irish. And it's like, go watch that too. If you like one, if you're looking for provocative television, and again, something that, as I said, even though there are times where I have to let it lie, like I don't watch Jack Irish all the time, it's like it never leaves me. Once I've seen it, it's still like I'm gonna get emotional, like it's still a part of me.
It's gonna be part of you forever, Chris.
Yes, like and that's what I want when I watch something. I don't want something that's forgettable or disposable or just consume kind of background noise content. It's like I want something that changes me from when I watch it, you know what I mean? And this is the kind of show when I had to wait to see it. When the DVDs came out, and then it was like, it doesn't matter if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm just gonna keep watching. I have to keep watching the next one. You just want to stay in this little world, and because it's just such to be moved instead of desensitized.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think for me, because when I was preparing for our podcast here or for our J reviews, I rewatched again the first film that I watched earlier and the first season, and I realized, wow, this show has took a residence in my heart. I will keep going back to it. And I think this is good TV, because TV kind of like gets you invested. You might want to see this scene because it reminds you of the character. You want to like see the sequence because you love the characters. So when you have a show that is even great and grand scale but very forgettable, so why would I care? I wouldn't watch, like Game of Thrones again and just rewatch certain scenes or stuff like that. So for me, the idea of revisiting it over and over and over, it means that it succeeded in just making this character like in an alternative universe. Like if I ever went to this Fitzroy in Melbourne, I want to see the bar. I want to see Jack's house.
And those are real places, apparently. His building and the Prussia pub. There were real locations that they filmed that people do. Yeah, take pictures. I guess you look on Instagram and the hashtag, and people are taking pictures with the graffiti that are all on the walls and everything. It is a real place, which I guess it really goes a long way in our CGI AI.
Nothing is real, or nothing is like actors are acting against like green screens, and they have all these dots on their faces, and then you have a film and it's a complete world, and it's just scary. I don't know.
That's a really great point. Nothing is real compared to this, which feels so real. Like it's not a long thing, 3 TV in 90 minutes and six, I think one season's 4 episodes. So it's not necessarily very long. So what does that equal? 20 episodes worth or something? But it's like the idea that you're going on a journey and it's going to be real. It is going to be cutting, and that's good. And I think about this the way I feel like it immediately shot up to like one of my favorite shows. And I think of my other favorite shows like Blake 7 or Homicide: Life on the Street, like being such visceral shows, or even like the finale of Quantum Leap, just like things that cut you and will never leave you ever, and it's like, okay. And again, it's like, have I converted? Like, Twitter, have you seen Jack Irish? That's like my answer.
We're bringing in new Guy Pearce fans every day, I tell you. Like, we're starting a movement, girl. Come on.
There are dozens of us, dozens. Yeah.
Even
Yeah,
Keith is on our side.
Will Bjarnar said that to us the other day. He's like, I get it. He's like, what is it with you two? I understand. He's like, I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well,
Okay.
my poor husband. My husband's like, I like his movies. I like his shows. He's done some really great stuff. Do we have to listen to his music in the car? He's like, I'm not watching Memento 2 days in a row. He's like, no, turn it off. Turn it off. He's like, yeah.
Okay.
But I love things that just change you and that, stay with you and that you get, but also at the same time, you see something different every time. Like I cracked myself up, but watching the other day when his cop friend Barry looks at his phone and he has his wife and then Jack Irish. And then when the ringtone goes off for Jack Irish, it's the Fitzroy fight song. And it's just this funny little, like, oh, he knows it's Jack calling him. And I told you there's this thing where Jack goes to like a secret club that's like a real high-end luxury place, and he drinks. And we know Jack is a huge drinker. And like they hand him like I don't know what it is, scotch or whiskey, I don't know what. And he takes a sip. And it's so funny because it's very subtle, but it's so noticeable. Like he takes a sip and it's like, oh, that's good stuff. Like we know he would know. And it's just this very like quick, like subtle moment of like, oh, this is good, because we recognize that in the character. Like, yeah, he could put on the suit. Yeah, he could get into the fancy club, but he's like, oh, this is the good liquor.
Jack. You never leave Jack, even when you wear the suit and you go into this club. Okay, and there's also this scene that we loved about, like the agent of the theater actor, the exaggerated actor. She's like in the beginning, kind of like complimenting him, and then he tells her, like, no, he's doing some sleazy stuff. She's like, this little shit, and she starts going at him, and I like her so much, this pesky woman.
There's so many loony, goofy people that come along the way because he's investigating, but off the books, but interviewing people, but like going in the own way, putting pieces together. So like he meets like, like trailer park moms who were like, come in, sit down, I'll give you a drink, or
The woman
like
hitting on him was awesome.
Yeah, or that agent where like he is set up with something like there's some kind of facade of a corporation or something, so they hired actors, so he's following the actor, and then the agent is like reading like the journal of what this Shakespeare actor did every day. So like you can imagine how the journal reads, and Sarah's like sitting there like, oh my gosh, just like the preposterousness of and again, maybe this is a contemporary thing, is it ageist thing? Like we used to say you have to hoof it, when you're trying to sell something, or you have to work at it or something. And it's like, so when him and Linda, like she says investigative journalism is dead, the idea that you actually have to go be proactive on a case. And then sometimes that's funny where Jack says, I was at the library and I did some research, I looked up some papers, and everybody else just whips out their phone and it's like, oh yeah, I got it right here. Like the idea that they have to work for these things that are happening, go places and travel and then get in trouble and find bodies and end up down mine shafts or something, or I love when Jack Irish gets thrown in people's trunks and gets driven out and dumped in the outback and he has to walk back, and then like while he's walking back, like he answers his phone and it's like one of his clients complaining that like this fence dispute is like 6 centimeters, not even 6 inches, 6 centimeters, because they're all metric. And he's like, trust me, I don't think it's worth it. There's just so many like silly little things like that, in these, and Brendan. Just the randomness of like the thugs that show up, that mess up, that make mistakes, that do cute stupid things. And even though they're supposed to be bad guys, all of a sudden it's like when somebody's in the hospital, they're bringing balloons and they're fixing up the house, or like we're used to like seeing like Jack and Cam like strong arm people with guns. And one time Cam's really pissed and he's like dumping dirt on top of somebody with like a bulldozer or something.
This was the best.
But then like when the daughter of like their fellow bookie friend is like up on drugs, like it's like Uncle Jack and Uncle Cam were like stopping her, like come from school one day, like, excuse us, young lady. Like there's just so many interconnected, like realistic things. And I know we keep coming back to that, but it's just like, so there's so much to be invested in, or there's just so many natural, realistic pieces, not plot points that happen because they should.
Okay, and I think this is why we invested in it, because we feel like this world was made for people to invest in. It was made for people to just connect with it and spend their time watching it and reveling in the details. So now that we've reached our final point, I want to ask you, like, tell me, first of all, your three favorite Jack Irish moments throughout, like three moments that you feel like stand out to you, and why our viewers should close our, like conversation and go watch Jack Irish. Start with the moments.
My favorite moments. There's kind of one at the end that comes back from the beginning, because when you first meet him and his wife, she wants to buy this really expensive table. And he's like, it's a waste of money. And she says, no, it's an heirloom. And then at the end of the show, you meet Orton. Okay, spoiler, yeah, Linda marries somebody else. And, it doesn't go well, of course, because there's Jack Irish. And her husband bashes the table. And then you kind of put together of like, that's why he went to him to be his apprentice, because his wife died when she bought the table. And this was where he's always sitting and drinking all this entire time. The table's always there. And then now it's bashed. And it's like this whole like fracture of like, okay, now everything's kind of even. And it's just such a weird moment, that's like a very like, irrevocable kind of thing. Even though it's only a table, it's just this like
a lot of meaning.
You can't go back from that, so it's like, okay, now everything has changed. I love the moments with Simone too, ironically, in the funny
the best.
Yeah. Like
her marriage to Simone and Simon, that was insane.
Yeah, like when you first meet because Jack is next door to his house where he's kind of doing legal cases, but he has to share his office with a psychic. And she comes in and she's doing like his IT work for him. And she's like, yeah, he's like, you taught this fast. And she's like, do you always learn this slow? And as we get to her place, she's got all her IT stuff. He's making fun of her for her online dating stuff. But then like at her wedding, he gives her a Star Wars toy for her wedding gift. But then like the tent is blown away and there's like a storm. And he's like, well, since it's raining, we can sit in the car and I brought your computer to do my IT stuff. And then like she's like, they start driving the car away. She's like, no, he's not the groom. And like, but then it's her car, is the little stupid little purple car that he's driving around. But then when she's at working a real job and she says things like, you bring me down, you make me unhappy, I'm tired of like your crazy crap. But then she's at this workplace where she's miserable and they're doing like costume days where she's wearing like a sombrero. She's dressed as a pirate, but then she's hiding from Jack when she's in her ninja costume. And it's like these silly, stupid things. And like, and her and Drew, his lawyer friend, like get together. Like there's so many like interconnecting little charming little moments with them. My third, I don't know. I don't know. My favorite Jack Irish moments. That's tough because there's so many. There's so
lot. I love
and
the dates.
I have screen captured them as well. Of course, you need a picture to go along with your reviews. And even when I'm screen capturing them, part of me is like, oh, okay, that's a good shot. Or oh, okay, that's a silly shot. But it's like, I like the silly shot. That's more accurate of the show. But then there are times I'm clicking through where I'm like, but the snapshot doesn't capture what was happening in the scene because there was so much in the scene. You know what I mean? So I don't know. But I don't know. I do like, I guess the third movie may be my favorite. Like I said, because it seems like he almost has
short hair Pierce. You love short hair Pierce, admit it.
Yeah. But at the same time, I said that it's like he almost doesn't look like Jack Irish with short hair. Like Jack Irish with short hair and cleaned up with his life back together is not Jack Irish. It's like he's just not suited for that in life, and that's okay. And again, like we have so many characters who are designed to be chiseled, cut from the catalog. Now when I see this Glenn Powell stuff of like every rumored movie he's supposed to be in,
I'm tired. I'm tired. He's like invading me.
I've not even seen anything with this dude in it yet. I haven't seen the
Top Gun, and I hated him. I don't understand. He was the worst in Top Gun Maverick. I was like,
I don't even know because I haven't seen the man's work. That's how I judge people. But when I see their work, not if they're with the internet with puppies,
their appearance.
I saw a picture of him, shirtless with his dog. Is that why everybody's fawning over him? Or was it because he was in a good movie with a good performance? I don't know. Like I don't like that cookie cutter. So I guess that's why I like the third one, because it's like, yes, it should seem like everything's good. Good things are happening for Jack. He's reconnecting with his family. He is investing in this case. In some ways, a very straightforward case from that. Like a judge tells him to go get this blackmail material, and that should be it. It should be very straightforward. But it's never straightforward. That's what's so wonderful about it.
Okay, so why should our viewers watch this video and then go and watch Jack Irish, especially if they're not like the biggest Guy Pearce fans on this planet like us? Like if you're like you like the guy, you watch some of his movies.
I don't know because I can't get my husband to watch Jack Irish. He's like he loves Great, which is actually by like the same people, the same cast and crew. But he's like, you only like it for Guy Pearce. I'm like, no, that's not true. I'm like, it's a
Oh,
really great show, and so I don't know. Like I feel like anybody who watches something with Guy Pearce, like we've had our own friends go, I get it. It's like if you just watch one thing, it's again the difference of impressiveness of performance, that not being vain. Like if Jack Irish, it's so funny because like he was in Animal Kingdom, which of course was redone stateside as a TV show. If we were making this here, it would be so drastically different. It wouldn't have any personality. It wouldn't be filmed in a unique place on location. You wouldn't have any of the quirky ensemble people. You probably have like a more badass villain time with all the more action and explosions and chases, or more of the crime legalese stuff. And the idea that it's not vain, that the character is perpetually flawed. And I feel like Guy Pearce really excels at those kind of gray kind of characters. And I said this to you the other day, that it just dawned on me. I don't know how I came to it. Something about pain, that he excels with characters that are in pain, whether you realize it or not. And I even started with you. I started with Priscilla. And the idea that like when Adam is telling the story about his childhood abuse kind of thing, and that the way he's telling it is probably different from the outcome. He's making light of it, and he's always really loud and boisterous and picking on other people, pushing other people's buttons. And you can see, okay, maybe that's a character in pain. I started going through a filmography with you. I'm like looking at this, like you could look at Leonard Shelby, of course, like you could look at every character he's playing as in pain. And I feel like Hollywood does not play pain. We want people to be cool, suave. We want people to be heroes. We don't want to see the vulnerability. We don't want to see the pain and suffering and torment. And to me, nothing works. The thing that works best on screen, nothing else compares, is seeing another human being in emotion,
exactly.
in pain on screen. So I guess it's not, I mean, you'll laugh. It's a very quirky, hysterical show, but you'll also cry. So if you want, the gamut of emotions, that's why we love Jack Irish.
That's why we love Jack Irish. Well said, Christy. Well said. Well, that was just a great conversation, you guys. We hope you enjoy our J reviews this time. We hope you enjoy our conversation. Tune in to Jack Irish. Tell us your opinions. We've had great opinions on our Bound episode. And stay tuned for more from Chrissy and Jay next on our episodes. And just keep the Guy Pearce love going. Keep the Pearceness alive. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.